and Brother Freak also goes to Minhaj Institute. And last week our topic was culture in Islam, and this week our topic is science in Islam. So it's very interesting as well. And we'll be looking in relationships between Islam, science and religion in the past in Europe, science and religion in the present era, and is science compatible with Islam? And it's a very important topic to discuss because obviously science is like a really powerful thing that we should all have inside us, and a really powerful element in all humans. And I'll just ask the first question to Brother Freak. And Brother Freak, what is your background?
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, my background is in education wise.
Yeah.
I have I went to university, Queen Mary in Westfield.
Yeah.
And my degree is in physics. So it is a science background degree.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And from this we'll be looking at different sources and different scientists from the Islamic era, scientists from Europe, like world famous scientists, and how they derived technology and equipment and other sources from the Islamic empire and from Islamic scientists. And
could we also maybe touch upon what's a very common perception these days?
Yeah.
Is that maybe religion and or Islam and science are not compatible?
That's definitely true.
Yeah. And then do people who go into science, do they lose their faith maybe somehow because they're finding that their religion or that their deen or Islam is not compatible with present day discoveries maybe?
Yeah, that's also very important because we're at a time now where there's people that are actually moving on from religion in order and going on to science, and that's their evidence of how the world is and how we should live our lives. And they ditch the idea of religion, and they don't understand the links between religion and Islam as well, because there are many links, including astronomy. And the great thing about Islam is its knowledge is basically science as well. And because Islam, it stretches out to a lot of places and a lot of fields. Science is a thing that's been going on for thousands of years, even in the years, and it came about even in the years of the Prophet Muhammad. The Ottoman empires also achieved their goals through scientific knowledge. Great astronomers from the Islamic world influenced the discoveries of scientists today. You have to go in depth in Islam to actually find links between Islam and science.
So you're saying that Islamic knowledge includes scientific knowledge.
Definitely.
And that's not just now, but that's historically as well.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, was there a conflict, for example, in other faith traditions? Are you aware of that?
I'm not really aware of the other conflicts in other faiths, but there are. I definitely know there are conflicts.
Yeah. I mean, it's especially in Europe. If we go back to say the Middle Ages, or it was known as the Dark Ages.
Yep.
And at that time there was a conflict between the religious community in Europe, either the Catholic Church, or you can say even the Protestant Church. They had a lot of issues and problems with scientists. Yep. Aristotle and people like that, they had a lot of problems with them. And it all came to a head. I mean, there was a philosopher by the name of or you could say a scholar scientist by the name of Copernicus.
Yeah, but definitely, yeah.
Copernicus,
yeah.
Yeah. So he was the first person in Europe to postulate that the Earth revolves around the sun.
Yeah.
So automatically, the religious community, they totally went against him. They said, the equivalent of astaghfirullah, what are you saying, But they were Christians, the Pope, the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
totally ostracized him, went totally against him. To the extent that he was he was banished, and he is abused about what he was coming out with. Just after him, there's another scholar who died in 1600, and his name was Giordano Bruno, and he was burnt at the stake for trying to repeat the same thing. So when he suggested the same thing, he was burnt. This is in Europe. And then just some time after him, Galileo, he died in 1642. He was towards the end of his life. He was under house arrest. He was under house arrest for 8 years, and that's where he died. He died in prison. So that was the behavior of you can say Europe or Western Europe towards the science community at that time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, scientists like Copernicus also derived scientific knowledge from Islamic scholars and Islamic scientists as well. Because the main focus for Islamic scientists was astronomy, and astronomy became really big, especially in the golden age of Islam. So there were a lot of people, and there's people like I'll come up to his name, but there were people like Ibn al-Haytham.
Ibn al-Haytham, yes.
Who was an astronomer as well, and he was also the one that he was a mathematician, astronomer, and physicist, and he was there in the time of the Islamic Golden Age. He was really important, and he contributed in the way we see things, our vision, light, and everything. He explained it all. He also, and other Islamic scholars as well as scientists, because they were so great in terms of mathematics, they invented equipment, simple maths equipment, which it could help them, and other things as well. And not just that, but because of simple things, even the smallest things that were needed in the early times of Islam, like how they used science just to find the most accurate time for their prayers because of the sun. And this was basically the sundial, and it used to be back then. It used to be in a lot of mosques around in the Middle East, and especially the mosque in Damascus, and that would give them an accurate time of how prayer would go according to the sun. And they also have if you went to Damascus, if you went to the central mosque, they have a really big surface of the sundial, and that's what they use to communicate. But now, because technology has grown so much, and because we've got satellites in space, and we've got other things as well that in Earth, that those things they're not really any need to us. And that's another thing about science, because science is the main source that improves technology. It's the main source that makes life easier and easier for us.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Ibn al-Haytham. He died 1048 AD, and he was a physician, and as you say, he contributed to optical theory. So if you study science, you know that when you shine light into a sheet of glass, depending on the angle, the light can go through the glass, but when it's inside the glass, it changes its angle, and when it comes out of the glass, it changes its angle again. Or if you shine the light at a certain angle, the light will reflect, it will bounce back. So he used this science to develop optical theory, and which eventually gave birth to glasses. So he is the pioneer of that, and he was such a great scholar and scientist, that his name was Latinized in Western circles, and they call him Al-Hazin. So they could actually call him Al-Hazin. They Latinized his name. He was so outstanding.
Yeah, and the not he was one of the he was more of like a famous Islamic scientist that we have, because in most people around, whenever you want to think of an Islamic scientist back in the golden age, his name would come up because he actually opened doors and gateways for other people to actually view life in a different way and actually see what's between the gaps. And there are other scientists like Ibn al-Nadim who argued that, who also argued that there's links between science and Islam, and not many people agreed with him. However, his ideas were mostly ignored, but then they were developed and modified by others in Europe in the time of the Renaissance. So obviously, in the time of the Renaissance and the Islamic scientists back then, they had a huge link in terms of transferring their ideas and gaining more knowledge.
So I guess the early Muslims, they took the knowledge and took the sciences from the Greeks and other lands which they had captured. So they took knowledge from China all the way in the east, and from the Greeks where there was a civilization, and they transferred this to the Arab world. They didn't just keep it, it wasn't just stagnant, but they built upon it, and they created new knowledge and new sciences and developed it further, new technologies, brought out new technologies. So so they actually contributed massively. Just one thing or important point I just want to mention there. In schools these days, in the United Kingdom and in most countries in Western Europe, and probably in the United States as well, when they teach children history, they teach Roman history, they teach Greek history, and then suddenly there's a blank of 1,000 years, and then you've got the Industrial Revolution, right? Or you've got the French Revolution. So they've kind of omitted 1,000 years worth of history, and that is basically the Islamic golden era, which we are in debt to. Even the numbers in the English language, they come from Arabic numerals. So in the past, in the Western Europe, they used Roman numerals. So I don't know if you've seen the Roman numerals. A 1 is just a straight line, an I.
And in clocks as well.
Clocks, you see it in old clocks. So 1 is just an I, 2 is 2 I's, 3 is 3 I's, 5 is a V, 10 is X. Now you try doing multiplications and additions using that, you're going to be struggling.
It's definitely true.
So they adopted Arabic numerals. So the 1 in English is exactly the same as a 1 in Arabic. 2, you just turn it 90 degrees. If you just turn it round slightly, turn it 90 degrees, is exactly the same as an Arabic 2. 3 is exactly the same. 7 is almost exactly the same. 9 is exactly the same. And 0 is more or less the same. And that's because the early Arabs, the Muslims, invented 0. In fact, it was Al-Khwarizmi who invented 0. And Al-Khwarizmi, he died 850 AD, so we're looking at nearly 1,200 years ago. And we talk about algebra. Algebra is named after his book on the topic, Al-Jabr wal-Muqabala. So from this Al-Jabr, you get algebra. So that's the impact, of Al-Khwarizmi anyway.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, we are all in debt to the Islamic era, and because it basically influenced knowledge, and it spread so much around Europe and even other nations afterwards, and many people reject that idea. Many people, they forget that idea, and they don't look towards that idea. They find other scientists who basically gain their source of idea, the Islamic scientists, and basically modernized it, created it as their own, and then perceived it that way. And that's the thing. That's why it's such a it can be a problem sometimes because you don't know where the links are. It's like there's broken links, and that's probably why they miss such a gap in school, because there's not correct links, or probably back then the idea was rejected, and then it was after 100, 200, maybe 1,000 years they bring the idea about, and that's the main problem. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he basically motivated his ummah, his nation, back then. He said seeking knowledge is compulsory on every Muslim, which is definitely true, because you need knowledge to know what religion you're in. You need knowledge to walk about, to go to straight path. He also said that whoever follows the path of the seeking knowledge, Allah will make his path towards Jannah, and that's a very that's a speech that influences a lot of Muslims and should influence a lot of Muslims.
Is that only religious knowledge?
It's only religious knowledge, but it's
both. I would say. It sounds to me.
Yeah.
Because it's a general statement.
Yeah, it's a general statement.
طلب العلم فريدة على كل مسلم. That seeking knowledge is not seeking knowledge of your creator or of Quran or of Hadith. It seems general to me anyway. All types of knowledge. I don't know. What do you reckon?
Definitely, because it's general. It's he didn't really specify which, but also he said that just gain knowledge and think. See, this is where Deen comes in as well. Deen and dunya. You can't just do it for worldly gain. You have to at least do it in order and be thankful to who gave this message, and it was obviously the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He gave the message, and this was from Allah Almighty. So gaining knowledge, obviously, it's not a bad thing. You can gain science knowledge. You can have two arguments, but it's the fact that you need to have links between these arguments. Otherwise, you're gonna have two separate arguments, and it's gonna feel like you're fighting both sides. So, and the problem nowadays is that there are a lot of people, and I know a lot of people. I also have a friend who they used to be Muslim, but then they felt like, oh, I've opened my eyes too much, and they've stopped being Muslim. They've actually gone against the idea of Islam, and they've decided, they've had all this evidence from different books, from different people, and they've said no, it's not right, it doesn't make sense, and they throw this at you. I've actually had arguments between my friends about this, and obviously for me it's quite hard because I don't really have much links, but for them they're probably doing it for worldly gain. They're probably doing it for something they want to do in the future, and it's a problem now, and it can still rise when people don't find the links between Islam and science. Then they're just going to give up their religion or go to science, because they're gonna think they're gonna feel clever, and they're gonna think, no, it doesn't make sense. I'm going to do this. This path's more easier, it's more concentrated. But that's not the thing. You need to find the links. That's the most important thing about science.
Yeah. What would you say? Just as a question. So you mentioned that you know someone who kind of almost left Islam because he or she feels that it's not kind of compatible with modern day with science or modern day technology. I mean, we've mentioned a couple of these scientists from the past, Al-Khwarizmi, Ibn al-Haytham. I mean, the list is huge of the contribution made by early Muslim scientists to the modern world. The list is massive. I mean, this Jabir bin Hayyan, he died 815 AD. That's going back exactly 1200 years, and he is described as the father of modern chemistry, not historic chemistry. He built up upon Greek chemistry, and he developed processes of experimentation which are more or less used today. So, and he was a student and disciple of Sayyidina Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq,
Yeah.
alayhi salam, who was the son of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, who is the son of Imam Zain al-Abidin Ali, who is the sole survivor at the tragedy of Karbala, and he's the son of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So Jabir bin Hayyan, he is a student of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, and literally he had written many books just on chemistry, and he had derived and deduced a number of methods of which are still used today when it comes to dealing with chemicals and medicine. So we've got this type of history. So why is it then that someone would be kind of disappointed or put off by Islam, especially when encountered with new scientific discoveries or technologies? Why is that?
Well, first of all, I think that we should all strive to gain knowledge in the science. So whenever we encounter something, or whenever someone blocks our way through our religion, then we can obviously defend ourselves. But probably because they haven't expanded their mind too much. They haven't really focused on these people, these ideas, and they've rejected them. They've put them to the side, and they've said, look, I want to focus on this. And probably because how they have the Big Bang Theory and how they have
so
evolution.
So you're saying that they feel that science or religion or Islam is not compatible with science. Is that?
Yeah, I don't think they think
so they feel that. I mean, do you think they know about Ibn al-Haytham, Jabir bin Hayyan, al-Khwarizmi, al-Biruni, to name just a few, Ibn Rushd? I've got a couple of books here just on this topic. This one is not written by a Muslim.
Yeah.
This is written by Montgomery Watt, and I think we can get that on the camera. And the book is called The Influence of Islam on Medieval Europe.
Yeah.
And he literally says, for 1,000 years, Muslims were, or the Islamic civilization was the center of learning. There was nothing else. That could compete. I mean, I can read. I can read what one of the quotes in there. He says, medieval Europe owed much to Islam in science, medicine, philosophy, and in material culture. Europeans borrowed a great deal from Muslims. So he acknowledges this in his book. And in fact, he was in many ways a very honest gentleman, because he had written a number of other works about Islam.
Yeah.
I'm not saying everything he had written was accurate, because he did kind of sometimes give the view that maybe Muhammad, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, borrowed some of his teachings from Christianity. Or that, and sometimes he tries to infer that hadith, sayings of the Prophet ﷺ, are not reliably transmitted from the Prophet ﷺ. Or he says that the Quran is maybe just copied from previous texts.
Yeah, definitely.
So he I don't know if he was completely honest in that sense, but however, he was honest in a lot of what he had written, and you have to give consideration when it's due, where it's due, and thanks where it's due, and he actually admits very openly that it's the civilization from Spain all the way to the Indus Valley, present day India, was a great civilization that can be said gave birth to the Industrial Revolution, gave birth to people like Copernicus, Newton, and Galileo. So, I mean, what do you think, if you were to mention this to people who have doubts about religion, because it's not just Islam, it's maybe some, as we've seen in the past, the Christian, the popes of Christianity, the heads of the Christian church, they were very much against science.
Yeah, they rejected it.
Yeah, they rejected it. They thought it was something heretical, un-Christian or devilish. So What would you say? I mean, what do you think if you mentioned this to, you know, I guess this should be a topic of discussion when speaking to, you know, friends who have doubts or who have gone into science and who don't find the same kind of information, or who feel that there's not the same kind of information in Islam or in the teachings of Islam. What would you say about that?
Well, I definitely know that thanks to Islam and its era, that there people like Copernicus and other people as well. They've definitely gained ideas and knowledge from that, and made it into their own, and basically developed it. And it was the birthplace of all the science and astronomy. But I don't think I can really see through their mind of what they think, the people that reject religion. And bearing in mind these people that I have discussions with and I have debates with, they're far from religion, and they're to the point where they hate it. They find it nonsense, and they just find it nonsense, and they just don't want any ideas from it. And I haven't really had a discussion with them about this source and how because of Islam, mathematicians and astronomy, they've come about. But I also think that they have other ideas, they have other things, and then they have different excuses, they have different arguments. They would go off from science and they would argue about something else about science. I mean about religion, and say, well, if you think that, then what about this? Well, if you think this, then what about this? They will throw a huge ton of information at you. And see, now that's the thing. See, this is where you have to fill in all the holes, because as a person that's studying in Minhaj Institute, I still don't have full knowledge. I'm still gaining knowledge. I'm still going on, and obviously there are people who they just push themselves ahead. They say, no, this is ridiculous, and they push themselves ahead, and then they start countering you. And maybe because I don't have that many ideas to counter their arguments, or maybe because they just hate the religion so much that they have different excuses against it.
Right. So I think the most important point is that we ourselves need to have knowledge of this information. Because if we don't know ourselves that, by the way, you know, for 1,000 years, it was Muslim scholars and Muslim authors and writers and scientists who led the way on the planet in various different sciences.
Yes.
So, for example, even whether it was mathematics, whether it was chemistry, whether it was geography, whether it was astronomy, whether it was the science of physics, of mechanics, Muslims led the way.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, there was a decline. There was a decline that happened in the last few hundred years. But even in the last few hundred years, very often we talk about, you know, often some people mention that, the Muslims were in a decline in the last few hundred years. But there were loads of technological developments even during that time.
Yeah.
This is another book which I've picked up recently. Science Among the Ottomans. Now, the Ottoman Empire was known as the sick man of Europe at one time, because it was an empire that was declining. But what we've got to remember is that it took 200 years for it to decline and become, and it still didn't disappear. It was an empire which sustained itself. It was an empire that, as we mentioned last week, covered 3 continents.
Yeah, the 3 continents.
Right? Africa, Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. It had people of different colors, languages, and it was ruling over them. And it was almost like a multicultural empire. And there's no way that they could have, the empire could have sustained itself if it was not professional, if it was not scientifically advanced, if it was not, let's say, for sake of argument, let's say that they forced everyone to live under the Ottoman rule. even then, you've got to have power to be able to keep that many people under control. How would you do that? If they weren't technologically advanced, there's no way they would have been able to do that.
Yeah.
So the Ottomans were way ahead of the times. And I think their decline, this is my kind of personal view, their decline, it was because there were literally about over a dozen countries and nations and states, kingdoms that were battling against them.
Yeah.
And also one rebellion inside of the Ottoman Empire was also fighting for independence. What it described as independence. There was the Al Saud rebellion.
Al Saud,
Yeah, they had two rebellions against the Ottoman Empire. Al Saud, Ibn Saud, and Ibn Abdul Wahhab Najdi.
Yeah.
They both formed an alliance against the Ottoman Empire. So, looking at it now, you weigh up. You have one state completely outnumbered, but despite that, ruling over huge expanse of land and sea, and they were making their discoveries even towards the end of the empire. In this book, this is not by a Muslim author. The book is written by Miri Shefa Mosenson. I think she may be Jewish. She is a scholar at Tel Aviv University in Israel. And one fact that she points out was that in 1877, the Ottoman Empire boasted the 7th longest electric telegraph system in the world. And indeed, the Ottomans were among the era's most advanced nations with regards to modern communication infrastructure. So the Ottomans were, in many ways, way ahead of their times. Yeah. One place where they did kind of lack was printing, because they felt that knowledge was sacred and it shouldn't be printed. In those days, printers or printing centers of printing used to stamp letters, so it would be a stamp that would be printing on a paper.
Yep.
So they felt that we can't have knowledge being stamped. That's a bit disrespectful. So they even had that type of adab amongst them about printing, and most of their battles were to protect other Muslims in other parts of the world. Yeah. We talk about Iraq, Palestine, Al-Quds al-Sharif, the Hijaz, Makkah, and Medina. They looked after these places. But the inhabitants of these places, some of the inhabitants, the Arabs, they felt that, we should be ruling ourselves. We're Arab. They're non-Arab. We're Qurayshi. We're from the family from the tribe from the people of the Prophet ﷺ.
They're being
Arrogant. Yeah. And now look at their condition. Look all across the Middle East. There's disunity. There's a corruption.
It's broken
destruction
down.
Is broken down. So, so they were protectors of the faithful at that time.
Yeah. I mean, obviously because of the fall of the Ottoman Empire, because people weren't united, people weren't together, so they couldn't really put their ideas forward. And now, because there's such a split in the Middle East now, people have different ideas, and not just scientific. We're at a time now where we lack scientific knowledge. We go, and especially in the Middle East, how many wars are going on? It's countless wars. So that's like the big problem. So
sorry to interrupt. We mentioned Galileo. Galileo, he died in 1642 in prison. It was not until 1992 that the Pope at that time forgave him and said, actually, you're not a heretic, for saying that the Earth was not at the center of the Earth was revolving around the sun. 1992. So for 400 years, 450 years, the church believed that this guy was a heretic. He was misguided just for saying that. And only, 10 to 20, 30 years ago, did they finally realize that, actually, what he said was there's nothing wrong with it. But if you look at all of the list of Muslim scholars that we've given, none none of them had issues like that
Yeah.
with the rulers or with Islamic scholars. You know, they were never persecuted for
Yeah.
talking about science. Yeah.
Definitely. That's where the link comes in. We're gonna have a break now, and we'll see you in a bit.
We are committed to providing you with the best legal advice suited to your individual circumstances. Drop us a call on 0203 500 8000. Our office is located at 62 Barking Road, East Ham, E6 3BP.
Why spend summer in your room when you can fly off to your dream destination with facilities like car hire and hotel bookings? Well, Flight Masters have got you covered. We offer holiday packages, city breaks and flights at the most reasonable prices with the best provision of services. So why delay? Call us today on 0203 598 9938 or visit our website at www.flightmasters.com.
Do you dream of travelling to those blessed lands where the beloved of Allah was born? Does your heart yearn for Medina, the city of the beloved? If it is your time to experience a spiritual journey words cannot justify, then join us at Sam Travel and Tours and book your Hajj and Umrah packages today. We offer group and tailor-made packages for all your requirements. Based on Romford Road in London, for our last 10 days Umrah package, please call us on 0208 478 8911.
Ramadan FM 2018.
The voice of British Muslims.
MR Accountants provide a full range of accountancy and taxation services, including annual and management accounts, self-assessment, tax returns, VAT, bookkeeping.
Assalamu alaikum. We are back for the second half, and we're discussing science and Islam, and we had many points, and even we had a list of different scientists and how they perceived their life towards Islam and rejected the ideas and the links. And we were going on about how there were many scientists who couldn't put their ideas forward because of religion, like how the Pope didn't allow Galileo's idea to come forward till after 400 years, which is, in my opinion, it's not the best thing to do, because obviously we are in a world when we are advancing now. So so we are advancing now, and it's time where we keep advancing in technology and ideas, and we create links. And not just because of that, we need to actually move forward and actually gain specific amount of knowledge, not in just science but other things as well. And that's where we can all unite. That's where we can defend our arguments against those who actually oppose Islam, oppose the religion, because it doesn't link. And that's the most important thing. And we are at an unstable time right now, where there are a lot of people who actually say, no, this is not right, this is like this. And there's a lot of people that actually believe in the Big Bang Theory, the evolution, and just reject their religion, say it's nonsense, say it doesn't make sense, say there's no links.
Just on that. Okay, so the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
So people reject religion because of the Big Bang Theory. I don't have the book with me. I couldn't find it. I've got a book titled Islam and Creation of the Universe by very renowned and famous scholar, Shaykhul Islam Dr. Muhammad Tahir al-Qadi.
Yeah.
And he actually writes about the Big Bang Theory and the creation of the universe in light of the Quran.
Yeah.
And he actually quotes a verse of the Quran which describes the Big Bang Theory. And it uses the Arabic words ratqan and fatqan. That the universe was one piece, and then it was shattered then it was spread out to form the universe that we have today. So my background is physics.
Yeah.
So in physics, according to physics or the Big Bang Theory, the whole universe began as one, you can say, one single, you can call it a particle or one single body. And that was of infinite density, zero mass. So you could say it was in the form of a photon or light.
Yeah.
And then from that shattered for the whole universe to come into existence. That's what the Big Bang Theory is. Now, for me, because I've studied a little bit of Deen as well, that's just confirmed by the Quran, because the Quran says that. It actually says, why do these people deny that the whole universe was together, and then we shattered it apart? So it's actually a question, it's a question in the Holy Quran. And there's a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is mentioned by Imam Abdul Razak.
Yeah.
He's the grand teacher of Imam al-Bukhari, and he narrates this in his work Al-Musannaf from Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that Jabir, he asks the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, bi abi anta wa ummi akhbirni an awwali shay'in khalaqahu Allah ta'ala qabla al-ashya'i. That he says, O Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, inform me of what was created before everything by Allah Almighty. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he replied, Ya Jabiru, inna Allah ta'ala khalaqa qabla al-ashya'i nura nabiyyika min nurih. That, O Jabir, Allah Almighty created before everything, he says, the light of your Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from his own light. Now the words, the light of your Prophet from his own light, from his own light is, you could say, a metaphor to say that this was the first thing created by Allah and there was nothing before it. And then the hadith, interestingly, it says, then from this light was created other creations. So it's like for me, it's like a confirmation of what has been discovered by scientists today. And also same scholar, Shaykh al-Islam, Dr. Muhammad Tahir al-Qadiri, he mentioned once that, and look, if we have a look at some of the discoveries of the scholars of the past, I mean, you had Al-Farghani. He died in 860 AD.
Yeah.
So that's like 1200 years ago. And 1200 years ago, he invented the compass. He measured or estimated the circumference of the earth. Totally astonishing. These ideas weren't even around in Europe until much later. And very quickly, the head of embryology in the world today is Dr. Keith Moore. He's retired now. He's a Canadian, professor. And he wrote his book on embryology in the light of the Quran and Hadith. And some Christian and Jewish priests, they approached him afterwards, and they said, why didn't you write it from biblical text, because this is just copied, Quran is copied from the Bible. And he said, no, I didn't find that information in there. So that's present now, contemporary. So one can't say that there is a disconnection between Islam and science, or there's incompatibility. No, rather books have been written on the topic.
Definitely. I mean, obviously our present day people that strive for knowledge are Wali sheikhs like Shaykh al-Islam, and I was reading thing. I'll just get the call. Hello, assalamu alaikum. Hello. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to say that, mashallah, once again, like last week, you guys are doing a really, really good show, and I think the topic is really interesting.
Thank you.
So well done on that. And I also have a question. It's a very simple question, I guess, but I just wanted you to hear more about, do you think that Islam and science is interlinked? And are there any similarities? And if there are more differences than similarities, then is there any way that we can reach a conclusion or an agreement overall between the two?
Okay. I just received a note to say that there's 2 minutes left. So if you want to give me, shall I answer it?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah. I would say that whatever is reality and whatever scientific discovery has been established as a definite fact, you will always find that compatible with the teachings of Islam, of Quran and Sunnah. Like I mentioned embryology, how the fetus develops inside the womb of a mother, the step-by-step, the processes that it goes through. This could not have been known, this was not known prior to maybe 100 years ago. So, and the head of this field in our time is Dr. Keith Moore, and he's written his book in the light of Quran and Hadith. So it shows that, definitely that is something which is definite knowledge, and it is according to Quran and Hadith. As far as there are one or two topics which are referred to as science that are often described as un-Islamic or or not against religion. For example, it's described as the theory of evolution, or more correctly, it should be described as the Darwinian theory of evolution, where a gentleman by the name of Charles Darwin, he suggests that humans evolved from apes. Now, this is, as it says, it's just a theory. It's not established even amongst the scientific community. But it's popularized in the media, in certain programs, natural history, programs about nature, about dinosaurs, about animals. But when it comes to science, it doesn't really. It's not strong. It doesn't withhold. There are a number of missing links. There are a number of weaknesses in the arguments to support this theory. So, say for example, where is the in-between creature in between human beings and apes? Where is that creature? It could be said that it became extinct, but then where are its bones? Where is the skeleton? It was also found that some of the skeletons were actually they were found to be fakes, and that's not according to Muslim scholars. The other scientists have pointed out that these were fakes. So, like that, evolutionists, they try to make out that it's survival of the fittest. Snakes originally had limbs, and then the limbs disappeared. So, where are the examples of this? Where are the evidences for this? It's a weak theory. Even if it was real, though, even if the theory was real, it's not completely un-Islamic. It's un-Islamic because Islam doesn't negate evolution within a species. So within a species, it's possible, but not from one species to another. So you can't go from ape to human or lizard to Donald Trump, right? It's not possible. It's not scientifically proven either. I think our time is up.
Yeah, our time's up. Thank you for the question. It was a really good question.
That's okay. Sorry for calling in late, and thank you for taking the time to answer.
Thank you for the call.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Okay, we're going to end this here, and then we'll be back next week. Assalamu alaikum.